So, how to evoke certain awareness of consciousness?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a difficult question, but I think if we look at how consciousness actually comes into the world in some circumstances, or how modes of consciousness come into the world, I think that can help us. We take for example, the monkey in the mirror, experiments. A very interesting set of experiments in which chimpanzees, also called the rouge test, because a red mark was put on chimpanzee's nose, and then they look in the mirror, okay? So they look into a mirror, and then what do you expect to happen? Nothing, perhaps. But for certain chimpanzees, after they've looked in the mirror for a certain time, and usually chimpanzees over 6 years old, they have a kind of a chimpanzee, enlightenment. They see, that is me there. That is me. So, and the evidence that they know that is me is the red mark they've put on their noses, and they wipe the red mark off. And then after they've reached the realization that they are who they are in the mirror, then they, like to make faces in the mirror and clean their faces and do all kinds of things in the mirror. So this is...
So dogs don't do anything?
No. I mean, yes, they do something. They think it's another dog, and they bark. They bark. They bark for 100 years. They've never recognised that he's itself.
Okay. So self-reflection.
So it indicates that the chimpanzee has got an awareness, a concept of itself, an awareness of itself, that is me. It got a self-concept of a certain sort, which is it's not equivalent, we think, and we can judge to human consciousness, but it's a very interesting intermediary point in the development of consciousness. Now, what I'm saying is, it tells us a few things. One thing it shows us that there is an intermediary level of consciousness. There's a development of consciousness. So that's one thing it shows us. And then it also shows us that looking in the mirror is one of the ways that evokes that consciousness. It's an artifact, it's just a mirror. But, it looks in the mirror, and that mirror evokes consciousness. And, I think there are many ways that many things in the world that evoke consciousness. Other people. I think, the presence of other people and apprehending other people is a very complex process. But what are, and we're very skilled as human beings in trying to get to grips of, can we trust this other person? What's he up to? What's he like? Do they love me? Especially when you know somebody for a lifetime. And so you grasp, although, as we said, we can't be entirely, intimate in our mind with that other person. Our consciousness can never be joined. But nevertheless, we come very close to apprehending the other person. And I think that, and it's thought. There is a theory of mind in which it is thought that, I don't hold this, but it is thought that you need to have other people in order to be conscious at all. But I don't hold that. But I think, nevertheless, I think that we do need other people to evoke, consciousness, certain kinds of consciousness, So, and I think that it depends what the other people are like. Who are these other people? If these other people are chimpanzees, I don't think they're going to evoke a very high level of consciousness, because you're going to think, people are chimpanzees, and you're not going to struggle, you're not going to strive to achieve that. When you're a child, you think, what is it like to be an adult? It's one of the things you're striving for, one of the things you're working for as a child. What is it like? And you're using all these skills that a human being has to try to work out what is it like to be I am adult? But not all adults are the same. I mean, some, so what is a child striving for? I mean, it depends what models you have. The different models are going to evoke different kinds of consciousness to some extent. So these are two ways that I think that consciousness is evoked. Another way, with theory, with theories of mind, with theories of consciousness. People are writing. Often in Singapore, you tell somebody, "Oh, you do philosophy," and they say, "Oh, what is that?" Well, you can't take the conversation very far. But I mean, and then there is, there are lots of theories of consciousness and metaphysics, and then people may go into philosophy thinking, "Oh, I want to improve my intellect. I want to improve my logical thinking. I want to improve my understanding of the world." Okay, so they're into the subject, and then they stumble across people who are saying strange things because they're theories of mind that they can't understand. I mean, in my workshops, people are asking me all the time, "Well, what is consciousness? What is it? What is it? And I say things that aren't understood. But it's in that striving towards trying to understand what I'm saying that people are reaching towards, and I think attaining levels of a consciousness they didn't attain before, because they're thinking, what is, there's something there, and trying to find it.
So if someone goes to your workshops, then they are going to probably attain higher levels of consciousness.
Well,
which is a pretty good, dope marketing pitch there.
That's not my claim. That's not my claim that people who come to my workshop. But I think it's one way to explain how consciousness can develop. I think I'm really talking about awareness. I think that adult human beings, are really all got almost the same levels of consciousness. You can say, well, my level of consciousness is not of a chimpanzee, it's not of a dog, but you and I have same levels of consciousness, but our awareness perhaps is different. How much we know that we're here, the breadth of the conceptual ideas that we have, which we understand that we're here. These can be very different. So I personally would make a difference between consciousness and awareness. I think consciousness, is the general state. And awareness, I think, is consciousness of particular things, even of our own, consciousness.
Okay. Hopefully we can untangle this and actually go into structures of consciousness and all kinds of things. But before everything, let me just give a summary of what we are going to talk about to the listeners. So you wrote a book called Pursuit of Value, and in that book, you came up with a principle of life that is unlike pursuit of happiness, unlike the mainstream things, happiness, pleasure, meaning, running away from getting hurt. Unlike these things, you believe that we should pursue value. Is that fair characterization?
Yes, it is indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. That's awesome, because from completely different reasons, I believe that as well. Although you believe we talk about different kind of values, but we will untangle all this.
Yeah.
Before going into everything, let's talk about you. So, who are you?
That could be a very big question. If it depends who you ask. you're talking about personal, identity. Is it? I mean, automatically I flick into the philosophical mode. What am I really? A conscious being? Okay, but that's not really the question you're asking at the moment. You're asking, who am I? Where did I come from? Who my pet parents are? Who I grew up? Where did I grow up? Why did I grow up the way that I did?
Why are you able to talk about these topics in that sense? Who are you? What led you to being an expert on value?
Yeah,
and consciousness.
Because, I think consciousness is the preceding idea, or the, awareness. The point is, so I recognize, I'm not very good in language. So that motivates me to focus on language, So when I was at school, I was hopeless. My English is very bad. But then, I'm engineering. When I worked, I trained as a craftsman and a designer, and the people were quite amazed, really, at what I could do. There's an engineering perception, like when I was about 7 years old, I built a car and I made an engine by gluing a lot of tin cans all together with sellotape. And then I thought, it looks like an engine, but it doesn't work. And then, wondered why the engine wouldn't work. But it's thinking about a problem in engineering terms. And these things are more indicative of an engineering mind than being good at college in studies of engineering, I think. Because, they're pointing towards something that is, because we talked about, original question was about, the structures of the brain. And they're pointing towards something that's genetic. It's not something that is being learned. It's something that you have an inclination to do. And when I was 13 years old, that was in 1962, I think, something like a long time ago.
How old are you now?
75.
75.
So.
Oh, really? You have good shape. Are you working out?
Yeah, at that time, I had a pair of roller skates, and the roller skates broke. And I thought, what can I do with these two bits of a roller skate, the front and the back? So I nailed them to a plank and then slid them along the ground and stood on it. But this was a skateboard. Now, I think if you have heard of anybody using a skateboard before 1963, I'd like to hear about it. But that's probably it might have been the first use of a skateboard. So I might have, I've invented a skateboard. Of course I wasn't looking to invent things, but, it just happened. And when I look back at my, as a kid, I used to make lots of things like three-wheeled cars and, really weird things. When I look about it, nobody else was doing this. Now, making bicycles with three wheels and things like this.
Where was it?
This was in England.
In England,
near London.
I see. Is it a small city or a big city?
100,000 people.
100,000.
Yeah. So so these. I look back and I think, a person who does these things, there's something about them. There's something about these people who do things like. So that's the engineering aspect.
Try to create value.
To create, we take us in another direction. Have another huge discussion about
another hour.
So that's one thing that I have an empathy, a feeling for. Engineering, and then the other thing is philosophy. So always I felt that had a peculiar. Lots of people have peculiar perceptions of the world, don't they? I mean, but a lot of them are mentally ill. Okay, so you want to have a unique, strange, you want to see the strangeness of the world without being a product of mental illness. It's something I could say about myself that is odd. That is, I can remember to when I was very, very young, that I can remember from before I could walk. I could remember being in a playpen and thinking, how do I get out of this? Oh, I know. I just lift it up and crawl underneath. That's before I could walk,
Well, what do you remember?
Well, I remember the colour of the playpen, remember the colour of the playpen, and remember the floor, I remember the carpet, I remember the radio on, it was on, and I had a thought like, oh, there's noises. I mean, I didn't, and you see, because I don't think in words so much. I mean, lots of people don't think in words, and this is commonly known. Trying to think of, you see, this is the problem. If you don't ask me the question beforehand, I don't have all these names of people who I could say, well, this person also thought that you don't have to think in words. A pre-linguistic thought. But I mean. So, I mean, there was a lot of pre-linguistic thought going on. And at about that time, there was noises coming out of a box on the shelf that we would call a radio, and the noises were language. And I thought some kind of idea was going on in my mind. So this is what language is, And then, so, I mean, from that time, I don't know how old was I, 6 months? 9 months. I mean, I could locate particular times. I know I was ill. I had some lung problem when I was 9 months old, and so I was in a cot, and I know exactly where I was in the cot, and 3 men came in, who were my father, my uncle, and my grandfather, and they looked at me in a proud way. They stood in the corner. And I looked at them. So there's something going on here, something, I can't claim the credit for. It's just you have a certain kind of brain and it's producing these effects. You can't claim the credit for things that happen to you when you're 1, 2 years old, Yeah. And then, I think another thing that evokes conscience and evoked the kind of conscience in me was trauma. I mean, there's nothing like a bit of trauma for getting you. So look, my mother left when I was 5 years old, you see, and she said, you will not understand now, but you will understand when you grow up.
Do you understand it now?
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I understand why she left home, And I looked at my sister, who was a year younger than me. She didn't know what was going on, but she had a feeling for something was going on, and she was crying. I had the feeling that I have the same attitude to people crying now as I did then. So why are you crying? It's very annoying. Don't cry. There's no point in it. But it was a nice bit of trauma. So what you want really for enlivening us is what Nietzsche said, is what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So you want a bit of trauma that's going to evoke, it's going to startle you, it's going to bring you up into another way of being aware in the world.
No pain, no gain.
But you don't want to be destroyed by it. Some people are destroyed by things like that.
Yeah, it's also the concept of anti-fragility, right? A system that is evolving under load, under an adversary environment, and the catastrophe, the adversaries, if they don't take it down completely, then it always getting better and better and capable of defending against larger and larger attacks, just like Bitcoin. The difference between robustness and anti-fragility is that a robust system does not get better and better through it being attacked, but an anti-fragile system is improving from that experience. Yeah.
So I mean, so I can point to things like that, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, what makes a person the kind of person that they are? I mean, it's difficult to say, but you can point to these, say, well, perhaps these are some of the factors that produce a certain kind of person. I always had a sense of strangeness, and then my parents used to, well, my father then, he used to say things and he thought he was quite clever. And I thought to myself, how come if my father's quite clever, there's all these things he doesn't know? So, I mean, I had a skepticism. So that's another thing. I was hugely skeptical on everything that people said. So that's another advantage. If you're a philosopher, you want to be skeptical, not skeptical because it's some thing that you've learned, but skeptical because it's in your nature to be skeptical. And I think that's that's useful. That's useful.
All right.
To be skeptical, But I mean, also, what I'm moving towards really is my perception of the world, in which it's startled, it's fragmented to some extent. It is, you're trying to understand what's going on. You're looking at it, and things aren't making sense, and you're struggling to make sense of the world. But it's not only that you're making sense of the world, but the perception of the world has changed. It's like a person who's on drink or on drugs. It's not, the whole perception of the world has changed.
Sorry, that's what you're moving towards?
Yeah, I mean, I'm moving towards explaining a certain perception of the world, a certain perception of the world that is, you feel different in a way. You feel, but it's an attitude to the world. I mean, an attitude is a combination of perception and feeling. You look at things, and because you feel in a certain way, you see things in a certain way. If like there was an accident outside your house, somebody was killed, they were run down by a bus, and then every time you go past that spot, you see that spot in a different way. You never see that spot in the same way. So your perception of that spot has changed. And in the same way, I think the perception of the whole world can change because of the experiences that you have. So, I mean, so I feel that my perception of the world was changed in that way. I think that, it's so common for children to have trauma in their lives. But I think what's not so common is for that trauma. Yeah, I think it's common for that trauma to be translated into philosophical thought. I think you find a lot of people, but then it's even less common for that philosophical thought to be articulated in a conceptual way. So I was trying to articulate all this. You see, so religion was quite important for me when I was younger as a way to articulate these mysterious feelings about the world, this feeling of strangeness, the feeling that you don't belong here, this feeling that there's something else, this feeling, what does it all mean? So religion is very good, I think, at expressing these ideas. Not so good at explaining them. I mean, one of the ways I expressed this, was in religion. I mean, I wanted to be a monk. I thought that was a good thing to do.
A lot of people want to go to monk mode lately.
Exactly, yeah, because, but it was, to me, that wasn't the answer, because the world was too diverse. There must be a diversity in your thinking, in interaction with the world. But I mean, one of the things we're talking about, other people also having strange perceptions. I mean, so one of the things I did, so I went to India. I was drawn to go to India because of the mystical kind of thinking there. So I hitchhiked to India.
You talk about that.
Yeah, so I hitchhiked to India. And because again, this was an expression. I don't know whether to tell you about the first part of the going to India. Yeah, why not? Because it makes a nice little story. But the first part of going to India was I walked from London to Rome.
Wait, what year was it?
1972.
Okay, so no internet, no communication.
Yeah. So so you're thinking you are a religious person, and you're thinking, oh, what's the best thing I can do? So you're thinking about these things. What is the best thing to do? So one of the best things to do that sort of expressed my feelings and my thinking was walking to Rome. I walked to Rome. It took a couple of months, 3 months, I think. And but really, it's a great adventure. It's a great adventure, because of Nietzschean, our will to power. You feel, I have got control over my limbs. I've got control over the planet. I can walk across a segment of the planet with my own 2 legs. So that was one part of the going to India. So, I went to Rome in the first part. And of course, I was disappointed with the materialism that I found in Rome. Of course, expecting it and very, satisfied to find the materialism of Rome, in the Catholic Church and the tourists there. Yeah, but that's what we go there for, to be disappointed. And then, so then I continued and I hitchhiked to India. But yeah, I'm getting towards a point here. That is, there are a lot of other people like this, and I met a lot of them going to India. This was like after the Beatles had gone there to see the Mahesh Yogi, and there's a whole stream of young
Steve
people
Jobs,
with these motivations. So it was really great to meet these other people, with similar thoughts and ideas and feelings. Indian thought was more sympathetic, had greater affinity really to my thinking, because Catholicism is quite materialistic. Materialistic, you're going to heaven, and you got these sins, and you have to confess your sins. It's all very, it's very materialistic and conceptualized. It's not very abstruse. It's not very subtle. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Catholicism is not, or Christianity or religion isn't very subtle. It is expressing things which are very useful for people to have things expressed for them. I think not useful. I think it's vital. I think it's like children. If children don't play with toys, they lose. They are at a loss. They are psychologically, deprived. Children who don't play with toys are psychologically deprived.
Or children you put in schools and tell them to sit.
You felt that as well. You felt that as well. Yeah. Freud said that the socializing process of growing up in a society was a trauma that people never recover from. So there's the socializing effect. So this is what I felt this is called. You seem to indicate that you felt this the same way. That you're made to sit here and you're thinking, I haven't done up anything wrong. Why am I forced to sit here? Why am I condemned?
So, your self-worth goes down in school. It's like when at least when I was young, I was like the whole world was my playground, right? And then you get into school and it's like whenever I was having fun, that was something wrong thing to do. And oh no, so you become like you're the bad boy here. And but then you get out of school and you can have fun again.
Yeah.
So,
You hope there's also positive.
let's move on. Let's move to the book. The Pursuit of Value. So how that came about? Why? What inspired you? What did you want to achieve with that? And what did you achieve?
Yeah, I think it's the articulation of thought, the conceptualization of thought and feeling that is very important. I mean, to clarify what one is trying to do. I mean, we mentioned earlier about some of the ways that evoked our consciousness. And, by trying to understand people's perceptions of consciousness, but whether you're reading Dostoevsky or Jean-Paul Sartre or somebody, you must be, what are they talking about? Why did they write about it? So in that sense, that reading somebody else's work can evoke consciousness. And for myself, for the individual, you're working something out, and that conceptual framework is a vehicle for your awareness, for your feelings, for your attitudes.
So you wanted to improve your thinking?
I wouldn't put it like that. No, it's more than thinking. It's the conceptual framework. Because, I mean, these thoughts, these ideas are vehicles. They're vehicles for attitudes, for feelings, for awarenesses. It's like, another thing I'm interested in. As a engineer with motorcycles, so I love motorcycles, and motorcycle is a vehicle for expressing aspects of your psyche. You can, with a powerful, a motorcycle, you become a dominant figure. You project power. You're able to go through space and time at a tremendous speed, and something is happening. It's not simply, I like the idea of speed, so I'm going fast. Something is going on. There's a real, emotional, involvement in the experience of speed and control of your motorcycle, and it is something. And I don't think it's something, a passing feeling. I don't think it's something, I had this experience and now it's gone. No, I think one had an experience and it becomes a part of one.
Mm-hmm. It's like any other craft. Like you get really good at it and then the time pinches you, or you're talking about something else here?
But you're touching parts of yourself, and by touching parts of by reaching into yourself, you are finding them. You're bringing to the fore. It's like Freud said, psychoanalysis is making the unconscious conscious. But it's not the only thing that makes the unconscious conscious. Motorcycle riding also makes the unconscious conscious, because it's bringing out those things that are within you. It's making them, manifest in the world. And once they're out there, you can take them further.
With extreme skill, that's an important component there.
With skill.
With skill, with your being really good at it.
Yeah, usually, yes. I think that. I don't know how much skill driving a motorbike is like. It's a freebie. I mean, I don't think there's much skill involved, quite frankly. I mean, there's a certain amount of skill, but it's not like being an artist. It's not like being a philosopher. It doesn't take years and years and years to acquire the skill of driving a motorbike. You can drive a motorbike quite well after a few months.
Okay, so
but it is expressing something very, and that expression is manifesting it, and you're able to feel it, and you say, well, it's there, and you can take it further. I'll tell you about something. I mean, I feel a bit guilty talking so much about myself, but I mean, this is what it's about. And that's
just getting started.
Something else I really, but expresses this idea even better than motorcycle driving is, I used to love doing judo. I did judo for many years, on and off, really, from about 14 years old till I was 38. Okay, when I got to 38.
Yeah, do you have the os?
I couldn't, every time I was doing the judo, I used to bruise myself or sprain, so I was being injured more, taking more time to recover from injuries than I was able to do judo. It was such, for me, a beautiful expression of all kinds of things, of anger, of self-control, of relation to other people, of grace, of being able to be beaten in a graceful way, and how to beat other people in a graceful way. Had to be put on your back by somebody else, and to be happy about it, and how to put somebody else on their back and not gloat over it. Other people, as I've said, are tremendously important to invoke awareness or consciousness, and there's different ways of relating to other people. I mean, some people relate to me because we're in love with them, and that's a very intimate way of relating with people. And doing judo is another way, an intimate way of relating to other people. There's a power play going, and there's a real person that you're dealing with, and you're trying to beat them and they're trying to beat you, but nevertheless, you can't allow that to give you a sense of pride or egoism. You just accept the relate. You're expressing much subtler aspects of yourself than pride or egoism or power. So that's another, very important. But I think, again, lots of people do judo, don't they?
Plato was a wrestler.
Exactly. But I mean, but I don't know what Plato thought about wrestling. I mean, but not many people talk about. I mean, some do. They talk about their sport as in very rosy, in very grandiose terms, because you can see they have a feeling for the sport. If you're a golfer, then golf is the greatest game in the world, and that's how you become a person, by playing golf. Okay, so you can see that this person has the experience, but he's not explaining it. He's not explaining what's going on. He's just expressing his feelings about it. So that's one important thing. I think to articulate what's going on there. I mean, it's already, enough to have the feelings, to go through the process. I think that artists are particularly good at this, that they have their art and they're finding their self-realization through their art. They're painting something. You say, well, what are you painting? Oh, well, they're painting this, they're painting that. And Okay, they say, "Oh, art is the salvation. Art is the salvation of mankind." Okay, maybe, but I mean, but yeah, again, what's going on here?
It's Bitcoin, by the way.
What?
It's Bitcoin,
Bitcoin.
the salvation of mankind. just where everyone get the memo.
Yeah.
You're going to be orange pilled by the end of this.
I feel like
Orange, Bitcoin orange, and you got the pill that you're going to be a Bitcoiner.
But what we say, but what this conversation is saying, I've given all these, we've talked about all these examples of being in the world, which is a Heideggerian phrase, being in the world. All these things, we're doing these, and we are becoming aware of ourselves. We're doing all these things. I mean, people look down on making money and businessmen, but I mean, I think that making money and being a business person can be a expression of the spirit.
Capitalism, fuck yeah.
Well, maybe, but I mean, I don't think many of them realize. Yeah, I think there is an idea that that people who they want to reach the top. They want to be the best banker. They want to be the best lawyer. So they are I'm elbowing other people. I'm out the way. They're playing dirty tricks. But I mean, I think there is some are. But I mean, I think there's a spirituality. There is a achievement here that cannot be dismissed.
Yeah, value creation.
Yeah, but I think there are better ways of doing it. But I mean, I wouldn't like to decry the virtue in these activities. Do you know?
Yeah, like, let's see. Well, you can be on the Wall Street and then try to fuck everyone, but you can also be an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whatnot, who are trying to create a lot of value and then sell it to you. Well, get rich, Bezos. Yeah. Come on, Jeffrey. So yeah, that's actually that is my life philosophy of creating value, telling other people that, hey, I created value, I'm here is the value, do you want some?
Yeah.
And you may give me money and exchange it.
Yeah. But I think I think that's great. But I think, the kind of value, as you've pointed out yourself, the kind of value you're talking about is not the same kind of value I'm talking about. But I think in the process of creating the kind of value you're talking about, you also create the kind of value that I'm talking about.
So I had it for later, but Austrian Economics. Okay, so are we talking about the same kind of value? Let me tell you about the subjective theory of value. The subjective theory of value in Austrian economics posits that the value of goods and services is not intrinsic, but is determined by individual preferences and the circumstances in which choices are made. So, this theory is primarily associated with economists like Karl Menger, Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, and this challenges the classical and neoclassical economic theories. Those are often rely on some objective measures of value, such as labor, input, or production costs. So the drama around this theory arises from its implications for economic policy, because it often serves as the intellectual foundation for the laissez-faire capitalism and is in stark contrast to Keynesianism and Marxist economic theories, right? So which advocate for varying government intervention. So this is the subjective theory of value in a nutshell, and you can see that this is contrasted to like almost all other economic thinking. So is it close to what you're talking about rather than
Yeah. I mean, I have heard this theory before. I didn't understand it in terms of a Austrian theory of value. Again, I forget the people who I have read it, who have introduced me to this subjective theory of value. It's certainly a development in my view to think that value is not intrinsic in the product of
and
work.
not objective.
Yeah, that it is something that we attribute, that we create, that we produce. Yes, but I think this is a very important understanding of value. But then I think we need to say, what can we do with value? I mean, where do we go from this? After we're talking about value in economic terms, good. What does it mean in human terms? What does it mean for human life? And
that's what we are going to untangle here.
Yeah. So I mean, particularly, we could take it in ethics. I got a lot of criticisms of ethics, but nevertheless, it's a very broad field. So much study and work and research has gone into it that we can exploit it. And then there's a lot of thinking which thinks that values are objective, that somehow they are. The classic view would be perhaps values come from God. Well, that values come from God. They are given and they're fixed and they are objective, or they are perhaps part of the fabric of the world. Somehow they're lodged in the world. They are objective things, and this is a very classical view that is very ambiguous, even in the most advanced philosophical thought. Most philosophers would say, yes, value is objective, but then they regress, it seems to me, in their thinking, in making claims that imply that values are objective and not subjective. Like a lot of philosophers would claim that certain things have, certain objects have intrinsic value. Well, if you believe that values are subjective, then it's contradictory to think that objects in the world, like trees or something, or dolphin. I can't use dolphin because they're conscious. But trees can have intrinsic value. But quite a lot of philosophers think objects like trees have intrinsic value. I find that quite a contradictory view. But I think that, and then we're moving towards a more subjective notion of values. How subjective are they? Are they produced by, or perhaps evoked by thought and reason? Are they things that an existentialist thought of as being created by choices? How subjective are they?
It's like I think it's, of course, many people believe that there are objective things like intrinsic value and stuff like that, but I hope many people who are listening to this will recognize that it is in our mind and not in the world. But I couldn't figure out how is it in our mind. But I hope you did figure out, and maybe we untangle that part here. But why value? So why did you choose the title Pursuit of Value? Why value? Why not
because
sex or happiness?
Yeah, because I mean, if you go through all these other things, they are unsatisfactory. They don't produce what we need. I did my master's thesis on cognitive and non-cognitive states. So, I mean, it's a debate between how do we explain things, how do we explain, motivation and ethics, meaning, do we explain it in terms of thought, reason, or do we explain it in terms of, well, the standard view is feeling, And so, I mean, having thought about this, having studied this, I concluded that, no, it's not, that reason alone isn't sufficient to motivate an action or to explain a moral will or explain the experience of meaning. You need something else. You need, affect or feeling, But I mean, affect or feeling or happiness, and happiness is a very common objective, particularly in utilitarianism, it's a ethical objective. But happiness, again, is not adequate. There is something else. It doesn't explain human objectives. It doesn't provide human satisfaction to the extent that human beings need it. So value has that potential.
Okay. I would like to actually go through with you why one by one all these other things. In fact, let's take a break and then figure out what are all these other things, and maybe let's go through them, because it is not obvious why someone shouldn't pursue happiness, right?
Yeah.
Or meaning. How did you get to value? Let's go through the alternatives. Let's start with the oldest one, maybe avoidance of pain, pursuit of pleasure, hedonism, right?
Yes.
So why not? Why not that?
Because, I mean, if you, pleasure, again, there's different aspects to this kind of experience. You'd say, okay, pleasure. But there's different kinds of pleasure. There's happiness, which isn't quite the same as pleasure. And then there's joy, which isn't the same as happiness. So these are, intuitively developments. It seems to me that happiness is more satisfying than pleasure, because happiness is subtler. The pleasure, pleasure seems to be a largely physical experience. It doesn't seem to be perturbed by what people think or by what people say or ideas. It's just pleasure. It's just a very physical, bodily, experience. Okay, so it's good, but pleasure is good. But nevertheless, but happiness, you're happy because something has happened. Perhaps there's something that happened that you like, or somebody has said something nice. So it's a more subtle experience.
What's the difference between pleasure and happiness?
How I would explain, there are different, we're talking about a spectrum of experience here. We have pleasure and pain, and then we have happiness and joy. So I'm talking about a spectrum. So what is the difference? So we can say, there's more bodily basis in pleasure. and in happiness, you could say there's more of more of a cognitive element in it. You know, there are ideas that produce the happiness, whereas ideas don't produce pleasure so much. It's more bodily, experience that produces pleasure. Now, why is one better than the other? Perhaps you can't really create a hierarchy. Perhaps if you have been denied of pleasure all your life, I can well understand how pleasure can be more important than happiness. But in the normal course of things...
Can the concept of happiness somehow also necessarily includes pleasure and no pain, Isn't it a bit more comprehensive term of well-being?
That happiness could involve the absence of pain, but only if you're thinking about it. If you have a conception of things, you're thinking, now I'm not in pain. I don't have to be afraid of being in pain. It seems to be there's an idea there that makes you happy. One basic way that I would distinguish these different states, pleasure, happiness and joy. And joy would be something, it's a higher state of happiness, evoked by particular kinds of ideas, subtle ideas, that you have done something wonderful for somebody, perhaps. So, it's that kind of subtlety of idea that I think will evoke joy, whereas happiness might be evoked by less subtle ideas. I'm happy that I was able to clean my car.
Okay.
We can approach this spectrum, this hierarchy, that I don't like to use this word, and I think we can use it to some extent, as long as we know that it's not really a hierarchy, because, sometimes pleasure is more important than joy. They don't always fit in a hierarchical pattern.
It's a better concept of...
Yeah, so I think there's more cognitive. There's more cognitive aspects to the higher end of the spectrum.
Okay. So we have plain pleasure, happiness, joy,
and then it depends what kind of concept it is. Are you happy because you have cleaned your car, or are you happy because you have given something wonderful to somebody's life that you've been trying to do for a long time, that you've invested in for a long time? So then that will give you joy. So happiness wouldn't be adequate to explain that, And then so we can explain them in these. There's different ways to explain them. But then you could say, justify the hierarchy in empirical terms, that by experience, we can see that some experiences are more worthwhile than others. So how do you know that? Well, it is empirical. So if you think that happiness, do you think that pleasure is the best thing in life? Well, I would disagree. So I would think there are other things. And
slow down. Wait, slow down. So we are talking about pursuing a state.
Yes.
Right? And that hypothetical state is something that we always want to be pursuing that. So
I don't know. That's a question for me. Are we always pursuing it? But I think it's potentially there.
Always pursuing pleasure, or always being in a state of pleasure seems...
No, always pursuing, always wanting pleasure. I don't know. Isn't it possible that you could have a contradictory idea of pleasure, that you think, pleasure is sinful, pleasure makes me weak. So I don't want it. So, so the positive becomes a negative.
Yeah, or excessive pleasure.
Yeah, so excessive. Yeah, so even
or never experiencing pain. Like that's not a good idea either.
Yeah. So I mean, your point, excessive pleasure, unending pleasure ceases to be pleasure.
And you can say the same thing about happiness and joy as well, right? Like unending happiness.
Yes, but I think
terrible life.
But I think less so. I think less so. It's less susceptible to being overdosed.
Yeah.
To having to excess.
But what about meaning?
Yeah, I think that's
always being meaning, always feeling the meaningful feeling of meaning. I mean, that's not that bad, is it?
Well, maybe, but I think always being it's not bad. I mean, I think you can tolerate always having meaning in your life much more than you can have always having pleasure in your life. Because it's more satisfying. I mean, that's what I'd like to say, that but on a empirical basis, it's more satisfying. It's more embracing. There's more to it,
okay, so but then meaning and value is on the same level.
Yes.
It is?
Yes. Well, yes. Because I mean, in my view, meaning is an aspect of value.
Okay.
Meaning is an aspect of value. So I think, that's why, we find it, I think, at the upper end of the hierarchy. But I think there's other things we can say about,
knowledge, reason, right?
Yeah, but there's other things we can say about happiness.
Okay.
Is that, why it's not so satisfying is because you can be happy, very happy indeed, but you can ask the question, why am I happy? What's next? And you won't be happy unless you find the answer. And happiness will never give you that answer. So you need you don't have to ask the question, but I think that being reflectively conscious creatures that we are, that question is very natural. It poses itself to us. And as we have got reflective minds, reflective consciousness, I think that it's natural for it to be posed, and it's natural for there to be a problem if it's not answered. So I think that's another problem. I think there's a lot of problems with happiness like that. So that's one. Yes, these are a few reasons why I think the happiness isn't adequate.
Okay. All right. So
I mean, it's very good. Yeah, I mean, I would like to decry happiness. I think it's wonderful. But if we're asking, we go back to the original question: what can we do with our lives? What can we do with the consciousness? Then then we're thinking, we're asking these questions.
And the answer is the pursuit of value is the most meaningful, most worthwhile thing that we can do, most valuable thing.
I think there are different aspects of value, and I think, where does it end? I don't think it does end. I mean, I think
subjective, so I decide.
So what? Maybe no. I mean, if you say, go through a few aspects of value, meaning, moral will, the good being ethical, love. I mean, these are all, I think, expressions of value, different expressions of value. What I'm posing is the idea that we have all these terms, these states that we know about, like the goodwill or love or meaning or purpose. And these are all aspects, they're all expressions of value. But it doesn't mean that they are the only expressions of value. There are expressions of value that we haven't discovered yet, because we haven't got there. We haven't been able to work out what they are,
And discovering one leads to a higher level of consciousness.
Well, maybe or maybe not. I wouldn't like to make that clear. But a higher level of awareness, I think it would tend to go with that, But I mean, so there are all these different expressions of value, and I think there isn't a definitive ceiling to them. I think that and that's one of the things I'm doing. What is it? What are these further expressions of value? And I think that you can't simply, this is a big question. It's further than mankind has gone before. It's that big a question, because you're going beyond language. You're going beyond, the concepts, the ideas, the aspirations that we've had so far. But I don't know whether it is my aspiration to go there in practice. It's my aspiration to point out, where there's something, the possibility to point out, and what they are, and not so much to find some new concept and call it X, and this is what we're supposed to be pursuing after meaning and purpose. No, but I think what I find myself doing is finding criteria of value, of features of value, that I think, this is what we should, this is a good feature of value, or this isn't such a good feature of value. So this is building up the kind of value that I think we should be pursuing.
All right.
So, it's not, people have been doing this for a long time, Lucifer was thrown down from heaven for the sin of pride, by comparing his value to that of God, so the pride, and for Lucifer, pride in the religious sphere is a sin, and so we're talking about a kind of value that we say, no, this is not a good value, so people have been talking about this a long time, and you get into people like Jean-Paul Sartre. He talks about the spirit of a seriousness. The spirit of seriousness for Jean-Paul Sartre is when you make an subjective value, when you take it as a objective value. That is, you say, this is what I have to do. I have no choice. I have to write this book. And Sartre say, you don't have to write this book. This is a choice. And you have to take responsibility for your choice, and not to see that you are fooling yourself. This is bad faith. That you think that you don't have a choice, but you do have a choice, because you're taking this value, this choice, as objective. But it's really subjective. It is open.
It's very interesting. I had a very similar thought. Because many people would like to do all kinds of things with me, and I often say to them that I don't have time, but I was thinking, do I really not have time, or that is my choice to don't spend my time on that, but instead spend on something else? And I realized that, that is my choice. But then how do you communicate to someone that I chose not to spend my time on your, well, actually very interesting technical question, but I still not spending my time on your question. You know, it's hard. How do you communicate that? It doesn't come off well. You just go with,
because
sorry,
you can't. I mean, like sometimes I say to people, people are trying to get me to do things. I say, well, have I got a choice?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, yes. So I say, well, let me exercise my choice.
Oh, yeah.
But I say, if I have a free choice, let me have a free choice.
Oh, free choice, free will. We're gonna go into all that.
But this is a problem, because this is the problem for the modern thinker, because, then you say, well, I have a choice, but we have so many choices.
Yeah.
Like Ty Nguyen in his book, he talks about going into a supermarket and then, you're confused by all the choices. Previously, you say, what kind of soap do I want? I have this soap. Now you're confronted with 100 kinds of soap, and you can't there's too many choices. So that's the kind of problem that expresses the kind of problem that we have in life. That, there's so many choices. Once you realize the scope of your choice, it becomes a problem. It becomes a burden. The burden of freedom and choice.
Yes.
So then you have all these choices. How do you make up your mind? Then you get into existential angst, anxiety, because you're overwhelmed with choice, and you become anxious because you don't know which choices to make. And these are all very modern complaints.
Yeah. By the way, this is one of the main theme of my work in software development, because we are writing a Bitcoin wallet application that is for many people, and many people want all kinds of things, and by you adding all kinds of features, you're actually ruining the whole software for the people who don't, like for the majority, right? Because you're overwhelming them with choice. And the main principle that we've been, or I've been following, is that let's reduce the cognitive load that the people has to spend on figuring out the basic tasks for what they want to achieve, which is receive and send money. That's basically all it is, but you can do all kinds of stuff there. On the little bit of option here, a fee slider, you can set the fee rate, and craziness. But I think we got a good handle on it. That was the introduction section, so we didn't even get into the book yet, but we are going to get into the book,